microphone. Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is Kiddushin daf Hey. In our opening Mishnah, we learned that there are three methods to accomplish Kiddushin: Kesef, Shtar, and Bia. Over the last 2 days, we've provided the sources for Kesef and Bia. So Kesef was a combination of the pasuk in Dvarim, Perek Kaf Daled, pasuk Aleph, Ki Yikach Ish, and the juxtaposition, or not juxtaposition, but the similar language that is used in connection with Abraham's purchase of the field from Ephron. So, which is also uses that verb of lakach, and so that analogy, or that Gzeir Shava almost, results in us saying that just as the Abraham's purchase of the field was with cash, with money, so too the ki yikach of the man taking a wife is with money. Combined with, and we saw actually yesterday why we need both of them, combined with the concept of the Yatzachinam in Kesef, in Kosef, excuse me, that when a Ama Ha'ivriya, a Jewish maidservant, leaves the master's home because she has become a Na'ara, it says that she leaves without any payment of money, without any funds changing hands. And the implication is that she leaves a possession without money changing hands. But there's another situation, namely a spouse, a wife, where the leaving does trigger a payment of money, and so as a result, that does have an aspect of money changing hands. And we saw again why we need both. One to cover the fact that the daughter doesn't get it, rather that goes to the father, and one to make clear that it's the payment, which direction the payment goes in. So in any event, we've got now, that was the story for Kesef, and we also looked at yesterday Bia, how we know that, and maybe actually the two concepts and why we need both, I think maybe would have been even on Wednesday. Now the days are blurring in my head already. So we move, unfortunately, so quickly as we go through Shas in Daf Yomi. But in any event, yesterday for sure, we covered Bia, that covered the concept that marital relations are what triggers a married status, or can trigger the married status, can trigger the status of Kiddushin / Erisin. And so now we have left only the shtar, the contract, the document, as we pick up at the very, very top of Hey Amud Aleph. Uminayin. So uminayin sha'af b'shtar. How do I know that in fact a shtar also is a mechanism of performing Kiddushin? V'dinhu. So this is all a quote of a brisa, and just like we had two versions of this brisa essentially already, that it went through sort of attempting that it says that there could be logic, and then in the end we reject the effort at logic and say that it's got to be a pasuk. But here we go. V'dinhu. Maybe we could do this all from a sense of logic. Uma kesef she'ein motzi. Money doesn't have the ability to take a woman out of a marriage, namely cause divorce. Machnes, but yet it can bring into the relation shtar shemotzi enudin shemachnes. When it comes to a contract, which clearly has the ability, a document clearly has the ability to take her out of a marriage, because we call it sefer kritut, a document of separation. So then certainly she should be able to use a document, not the same document, but a document, in order to enable the creation of the relationship at the beginning of the relationship, namely to do Erisin / Kiddushin. So no, we're going to reject that, because Mala Kesef. 1 second. What about money? Shevkain podin bo hektish u'maiser sheni, tomar shtar she'ein podin bo hektish u'maiser sheni. You can't compare money and a document. Because yes, it's true that money doesn't have the ability to release a woman from a relationship and cause divorce, but money does have the ability to redeem hektish and meiser sheni. Tomer start she'ein bodin bo hektish and meiser sheni. Whereas a document does not have the ability to do that, and so as a result, you can't say that documents are strictly stronger than money, because there's a strength that money has that documents don't have. Now, this actually is not an actual verse, even though it's sort of written as a verse. The verse is actually V'im goal yigalas hasadeh hamakdish oso hamakdish oso v'yasav chamishis kesef erkecha alav v'kamlo. So that's where the kamlo parts, and the implication of the whole first half of the beginning is v'nasan hakesef. So the point is that it's a shorthand way of saying that you give money and you get, and the field becomes redeemed, the hektish becomes redeemed, and the point is that only works with money, not with a contract. Now, interesting debate between Rashi and the Rashba here. If we take a look at Rashi, the top line on Hayam and Aleph, shtar she'ein podin bo hekdeshos, that when it comes to a shtar, you're not able to use it to redeem hektish or meiser sheni. And what would you write in the document? So Rashi suggests im kasav legizbar, if you write to the sort of the accountant, the central authority, to the treasurer, shtar al ma'oz pidyon haktesh, a contract or a document for the redemption money for the hektish. So ein hekdisho pidui, then the hektish would not be redeemed. Because we need this concept of giving money and then you get it. And so what does Rashi understand that this document says? Basically, the document's an IOU, saying I owe you this amount of money, temple treasurer, and through that, I will now have redeemed it. The Rashba says that doesn't make any sense. Meaning, if we're going to try and compare a document that is used in connection with Kiddushin to how you would use it with respect to redeeming hektish or meiser sheni, it wouldn't be an IOU. The document that you do use to get married to somebody doesn't say I owe you money. It's not sort of like a pseudo replacement of the money payment that would enable somebody to get married. Rather, it's basically a document that says, with this document, I thee wed. So as a result, that's what the document's going to say. And so as a result, the Rashba says that what we're talking about must be actually a contract that literally says, with this document, I have redeemed you. Meaning I have redeemed this meiser sheni or this hektish. And of course, again, the answer is that the Torah tells us, v'nasan hakesef v'kamlo, it doesn't work if you don't give money. So the bottom line is we've come up with an objection. So as a result of this objection, we now come up with another approach. So Amar Kra v'yatza v'haisa. So we can therefore give another answer number 2, that it's that we have this concept of v'yatza and v'haisa, right? The pasuk says v'yatza mi beito, that she leaves the house of her first husband, v'halcha v'haisa leisha acher, and then she goes and marries to somebody else. So the haisa is a sense of marriage. The yatza is a sense of divorce. And the point is the context of these psukim is to tell us that a woman is not able to return to her first husband if she marries somebody else in the meantime. So the bottom line is by putting both these concepts in a single pasuk, we get makish havaya liyitzia. There's a connection between marrying and leaving the marriage. Mayitzia b'shtar, af havaya nami b'shtar. Just as one can leave a marriage with a document, namely a get, so too one can begin the marriage with a document that is the shtar that we were learning about in our Mishnah. Well, one second, once we're connecting leaving and coming, meaning marriage and divorce, let's go in the other direction and say that just as you can do Kiddushin with money, now you should be able to do divorce with money. So Amar Abaye, Yomru Kesef Machnis, Kesef Motzi. 1 second. You're going to say that money can bring in and money can take out? That doesn't make any sense. Sanegor Yasek Kategor. How can something that is so constructive as in its ability to enable a couple to be married become destructive and effectively undo that marriage? How could that be? We would never want that to be the case. Well, the Gemara asked, 1 second, we've just said that a contract does exactly that. Nami. How can you tell me that you don't want money to do both divorce and marriage? The problem is that a document does both also. So again, and this is the first of three answers, I think, right? No, two answers that we're going to give to this question. Again, the question is, once we connect divorce and marriage, so why not allow kesef to be used for both as well, meaning go in the other direction, just as we said that we're going to learn from divorce that a contract works, so too we'll learn that at the start of marriage in Kiddushin, a contract will work. Why not also say that in the other direction by money? Just as money works for the beginning of marriage, we should allow it to work at the end of marriage to create the divorce. So Abaye says, no, we don't want something to work in both directions because we don't want the defender to become the accuser. And this is very appropriate as today we began the concept, began saying LeDavid and began blowing the shofar, so that you can call this a Daf Yomi coincidence, because of course this concept of Saneger Yasek Kateger is why we don't wear leather shoes on. We don't. We are careful with what we wear on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and in a variety of other situations. So the bottom line is we have to be, we want to make sure that we avoid, gold and stuff like that, so that we don't, have why the Kohen Gadol wears the white clothing when he goes into the Kodesh HaKodashim on Yom Kippur in order to avoid Saneger Yasek Kateger. Here he is the defender. We don't want him to bring in the gold that would make him an accuser. All right. So Ihachi Shtar Nami. So again, we say the back to the Gemara. So the concept that we said in the Gemara is it should be the same thing by Shtar. We said that a shtar works in both directions. So don't we have a problem of Saneger Yasek Kateger? Well, no. Yomru Shtar Motzi Shtar Machnis, right? Kateger Yaser Saneger. So finishing the question, right? Shouldn't we say that a document takes in and takes out? And so now we've got again an accuser becoming the defender. Here we have the opposite direction, right? Kateger Yasa Saneger, right? The point is that how can an accuser, namely the thing that's causing divorce, become the defender? So it's funny, we could have added that, hey, well, that's okay. It's not bad to have an accuser become a defender, but in any event, we're going to answer something different. The point is that when you look at the documents, so then the documents are distinct. You can tell the difference between a document that is for divorce and a document that is for Kiddushin. They have different language in it. As Rashi says, Hai shtar l'chud, end of the second line, beginning now the third line of Rashi on Hey Amud Aleph. B'zeh katuv lashon knisa, right? The one for Kiddushin has a language of coming in. B'zeh mefurish lashon yitziyah, and the other one, namely the divorce document, the get, specifically has a document of taking out. So it's not an issue. You're not going to get confused that the accuser is becoming the defender. So Hakinami, well, 1 second, we've got a distinction when it comes to the money too, because Hai Kaspa L'chud v'Hai Kaspa L'chud. Each of them can be seen on their own. What do we mean by that? So take a look again back in Rashi, fourth last of the wide lines at the top of Rashi. Hai kasbalachud kishahu nosno mefarish almanas mahu nosno. It refers to the language that the person uses right? The point is that when you talk, when you give the money for marriage, you say what it's for. You say, Hare at Mikudeshes li, right? And so as a result, B'tabadzu, with this ring. So the point is that you're going to make it clear whether the money is for going in or for going out. So the Gemara answers, no, Tiva Miachadhu. Now look, when you look at the money itself, the imprint on the money itself, that's one. As Rashi says, end of the last wide line in the top of Rashi, Chadhu Eino Nizkar Betocho Im Lahotzi Im Lahachnis. You can't tell by looking at the money whether that money is meant for going in or for going out. Unlike the contract, where you can look at the contract and tell the difference. And so as a result, the concept of kateger yasas anegar is going to be true with respect to money, but not true with respect to contract. So that is Abaye's answer as to why we don't learn in the other direction. Rava offers an alternative answer. Amar Krava Kasavla. No, the reason is that we have an explicit other verse that specifically says that the husband needs to write the document that will enable him to be divorced. So as a result, you can be divorced with a contract. You can't be divorced with money. Well, 1 second. Once you're using because of law to exclude something, how do you know that what's being excluded is the ability to do some other mechanism for divorce? Maybe it's limiting writing only to divorce and not to marriage, and telling us that you can't use a document for marriage. So no, because remember, we have this concept of leaving and coming in being similar, and makish, so we compare the two. So as a result, we compare the two with respect to enabling the usage of a written document, and we don't compare the two when it comes to whether or not the cash can be used for divorce. Umar Ra'isa. Well, 1 second. Those ended up being choices, because you could have just said the exact opposite, meaning you could have said, let's say that the connection is to allow both to happen through kesef, while shtar is limited to divorce. We could have used the exact same verses and just came to that conclusion. So mistabra ka'e begerishin mima'it gerishin. No, when we have the concept of a kasav law, we're going to say that it comes to exclude another type of divorce because we're talking about divorce. But kai begerishin mima'it kedushin. That's better than using divorce to exclude Kiddushin. Okay, and so as a result, that's why we're going to read it that way and not the other way. So now we're going to ask a question, because we've got an opinion that seems to use this verse for another purpose. So 1 second. Rabbi Yossi Haglili the apikle lahai kra the drasha achrina. As you know, we can only use each verse to teach us one thing new, or at least we have to identify other reasons in the verse that will allow us to teach an extra lesson. And Rabbi Yossi Aglili uses the cut of law for another lesson, namely that a get can be written on anything except food and live animals, which is something that we saw all the way back in Maseches Gittin, our last Maseches, back on Daf Kaf Aleph on Mabet. So how does he derive that you can't use kesef? Now it's interesting. This is really, I think, only a question on Rava, because as we saw, Abaye uses essentially logic to get us there of sanegar yaseh kategor, and so as a result, he doesn't need to use the concept of the cus of law, and so as a result, he doesn't have a problem with how to explain Rabbi Yossi. But Rava would need to have an explanation for how Rabbi Yossi could learn this, because he uses the pasuk of because of law for another purpose. So Amar Kra Sefer Krisus. So he would use the term Sefer Krisus. But 1 second, and what's the lesson? Sefer korta ve'ein davar acher korta. So same basic idea, right? Instead of focusing on the writing, we focus on the object, on the object of the sentence. That you have to have a document of severing the relationship and not something else. So v'rabbanan, 1 second. Well, what about the rabbis? High kritud my of delay. If now that they already are using according to Rav of the cuss of law in order to teach it, what do they use kritut in order to teach? So they they use it to that that the divorce has to be something that completely severs the relationship. Look at Kiddushin rather, and this is as we have in a brisa. That if one were to give a divorce on the condition that the wife no longer drink wine forever, or no longer visit her father's house forever, those are not a get, because they la'olam ein zeh kritut, because this is not a definitive severing of the relationship. However, and Rashi notes here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines down in the narrow lines, ein zeh kritut, shekol yameha he negedet bo l'kayem tenai zeh machmato, that for the rest of her life, effectively, she is tied to him in order to fulfill this condition as a result of his making the statement. And so that's not going to be a valid divorce. So again, because of the word kritut. So, but however, if you were to just say kol shloshim yom for the coming 30 days, harei zeh kritut, that is sufficient. So, the Rabbi Yossi Aglili mikares kritut kanafkale. Well, 1 second. Why, given the fact, and how does Rabbi Yossi learn this? Right, because he uses sefer kritut for another purpose. Right, he uses it to tell us a sefer and not cash and not money. So he learns the lesson that the rabbis learned from the fact that the word says the Torah says kritut rather than karet. It could have just said sefer karet. The fact that it says sefer kritut teaches us this additional lesson. For Rabbanan, kares kritut lo mashma lahu. Whereas the rabbis say no. Sometimes the Torah uses a little bit longer word. Uses a word like kritut instead of karet, and that isn't anything that we can learn from. And so as a result, we've now explained what everybody learns from each aspect of these verses, according to Rava, that would have a potential problem with Rabbi Yossi Aglili, because he is using the verse of Kasav Law for another purpose. Okay. So now that we have, and we go back now a little bit, and we now note the fact that in the brises that we've quoted, we have attempted in each instance to learn one method of Kiddushin from another single method of Kiddushin. Now the Gemara proposes, well, 1 second, why don't we learn one method of Kiddushin from 2 others? So we're going to go through each of the 3 items and see why it is that we can't learn one from the other 2. So yeah, we've learned already that from the brises that we've taught that you can't learn one method of kesef shtar ubiyah from any other one. But tesi chada mitarti, why not learn one from 2? So hi Tesi, which one are you going to try? So lo lichtav rachmana b'shtar. So let's say that the Gemara that the Torah didn't tell us anything about shtar, but tezi mihanach, and now let's say that maybe it'll learn from the other 2. That won't work, because malahana shekain hanasa meruba. The concept of money and marital relations both bring pleasure to the woman and bring benefit to her, and so, but that is not true with respect to a contract. Again, the contract only says that through this contract you're married to me. There is no benefit of the object itself, of the mechanism of the marriage to the woman, and so that is different. So you can't learn star from the other two. All right, so fine, that doesn't work. Well, lo nichtav ramachmana bivia. So let's not write about marital relations, v'tesim mihanach, and we can learn from the other two. Well, the problem is malahanach shekain kinyan meruba. Well, these other two, they are involved in lots of other acquisitions, meaning you can buy a slave, you can buy property with both money and documents, but you can't do that with relations. You can't that would effectively be prostitution. So you can't do that. So lo nichtav rachmana. All right, so fine. So I understand that we can't learn bia from the other two. So lo nichtav rachmana bekesef. All right, so don't let the Torah write about kesef. V'tezim mehanach, and let's learn from the other two. Well, that also doesn't work because mala hanach shekain yeshnan bal karcha. Well, 1 second. Those other two have an aspect of being against the person's will, namely a document in the context of divorce has the ability of being, even if the wife, again, at the time of the Gemara, the wife's willingness to participate in the divorce was not necessary. And so as a result, a woman can be divorced with a document against her will. And when it comes to marital relations, even though, of course, rape is prohibited and is a terrible thing, but even if you don't go that far and talk about relations from the perspective of just the woman not having in mind to be married, we know that marital relations or relations do enable the woman to be married, even though she didn't have an intention to be married. If we're talking about a case of yibum, in a case of yibum, the husband intending to do yibum to marry the yavama will be sufficient to cause them to be married, even if she doesn't have a corresponding intention with respect to her relations, with respect to that cohabitation. So as a result, that makes these two different. Now, 1 second, maybe we can say that money is similar. Kesef nami bal korcha ba'ama ha'ivriya. Well, the father can sell his daughter against her will. So doesn't that show that that there's a possibility of transferring? No, but ishus mia lo ashkachan. No, in when it comes to marriage, we don't see that money actually has this ability. It's interesting. It only occurs to me now, and I don't have a great answer to why. What about the marrying of a minor daughter? Isn't that in connection with marriage, and isn't that in connection with something that could be against her will? But I guess there's an aspect that if it's truly against her will, so we would not, maybe it wouldn't be required. But I'm not exactly sure as to why that wouldn't be an example, but clearly the Gemara doesn't think that the father has the ability to do that. So, or certainly it doesn't have the person who's buying it doesn't have the ability to do it. So, all right. In any event, the bottom line is that the Gemara now has rejected that approach as well. So, Amar Rav Huna chuppah konam. So now we're going to change. So we've now concluded that in fact there is no ability to learn any of the three from the other two. Well, that is a perfect setup for Rav Huna. Now we saw Rav Huna back on Gimel Amud Aleph back on Wednesday, because Rav Huna suggests that chuppah may also be used to perform Kiddushin. And so the Gemara is now going to discuss that and actually come to the conclusion that all three, Kesef, Shtar, and Bia, are what it takes to show that chuppah should also work. So let's take a look and we'll see that. So Amar Rav Huna chuppah konam mikal v'chomer. Actually, chuppah can we can see should also be able to work to perform Kiddushin based on a kal v'chomer. Uma kesef she'enu machil b'truma, because look, when you have money, it does not have the ability to cause somebody to be able to eat truma, but yet kona, but it can enable a woman to be married and have Kiddushin. So chuppah shemachel betruma eno din shetikna. So chuppah, which enables a woman to eat truma, it should certainly have the ability to cause her to be married with the Kiddushin. But when second, the Gemara challenges that assumption or presumption that kesef doesn't have the ability to enable a woman to eat truma. But kesef doesn't have the ability to allow the woman to eat truma. Ula is the one who taught us. Devar Torah arusa bas Yisrael ochelas betruma. Really, if a woman has done a risin, namely Kiddushin, she should be able to eat truma. Because we have this concept of kinyan kaspo, that a Kohen, when he does something that acquires something as in exchange for money, so here he's done that with respect to the woman and married her. So v'hai kinyan kaspo, this woman is an acquisition of money. So really, she should be able to eat truma from the Torah. And why don't we? Umat tam amru eino ochels. Why did the rabbis prohibit her to eat truma? Gzeira shema yimzegula kos beveis avia. Because maybe she'll pour some out for somebody else in her father's house. And she'll end up giving her brothers and sisters to drink. And so as a result, we'll end up with people eating truma that they're not supposed to eat truma. And so as a result, that's why we don't allow her. But really, kesef alone should enable a woman to eat truma. So as a result, that cannot be the lesson that Rav Huna was using to teach us this. Ela parachachi. So rather, let's say the following. Let's make it this way. Uma kesef she'eno gomer koneh. So 1 second. When it comes to money, it doesn't have the ability to complete the transaction, and yet it does have the ability to start the transaction. Chuppah shegomeres eno din shetikna. When it comes to chuppah, which has the ability to complete the transaction, namely perform the nisuin, shouldn't it certainly have the ability to affect Kiddushin as well? So no, malakesef shekaim podim bo hekdeishos umaser sheni. 1 second, you can use money to redeem hektish and meiser sheni, consecrated items and meiser sheni. So that's a unique power that money has that chuppah does not have. You can't use chuppah to somehow redeem hektish and meiser sheni. So 1 second, bia tochia. Bia doesn't have the ability. Relations don't have the ability to redeem consecrated items. So as a result, we can add in the concept of we can use bia and instead as our source. Well, 1 second, malabia shekain kono biyivama. Well, 1 second, bia has the ability to create an acquisition when it comes to yibum. So as a result, it also has a power that chuppah doesn't have. Well, kesef yochia. Well, now let's go to the third of the possibilities, and kesef, because kesef also doesn't work when it comes to yibum, and so chazar v'chazar adin. So basically, we can knock out the ability of money to consecrate, to redeem things, and the ability of marital relations with respect to yibum, because each of money and marital relations don't have the ability to do the other. So clearly their aspect is not necessary. And so now we can learn from both kesef and bia to chuppah. Well, 1 second. And so we lo roizeh k'roizeh, lo roizeh k'roizeh. So bottom line is none of them have a unique strength. Atzara shava shebehen kon shekonin ba'alma, and the characteristic that both money and bia have is that they have the ability to do other kinds of transactions, namely money with respect to redemption, and bia with respect to yibum, the kohen kan, and yet they're able to do Kiddushin. So too, I'm going to tell you that chuppah, shekona ba'alma, it has the ability to do other acquisitions, namely to do nisuin. The kohen kan, it should also have the ability to do Kiddushin. Well, 1 second. Well, 1 second. The problem is that when it comes to money and bia, they have something together that that chuppah doesn't have. Namely, they give benefit to the recipient. But so as a result, we can't just learn from money and bia to chuppah. So, but the Gemara responds, no, shtar yochiach. Actually, the document will satisfy our situation and will enable us to do it, because a shtar does not, allows the person to engage in Kiddushin. It's a sufficient method of Kiddushin, but yet it does not give benefit. So we see that benefit is not necessary. Well, one second, Mala shtar shekain motzi b'vas Yisrael. Well, one second, but a shtar has the ability to take a woman out, namely to cause divorce. So kesef ubiya yochichu. Well, so fine, but that may be true, that you've just shown that shtar has a unique aspect, but kesef and bia have their own unique aspects, because they have the ability to they do not have the ability to cause divorce. And so as a result, we see that the ability to cause divorce is not necessary for an item that enables Kiddushin. So v'chazar adin. And so as a result, we can go round and round, and we in the end we say lo roizeh k'roizeh, below roizeh k'roizeh. So as a result, each one has unique aspects, and we can look at what makes all of them similar. And the bottom line is that ba'alma. In every situation, there's some kind of acquisition that works. When it comes to shtar, it's the woman's acquisition effectively of herself. But in every situation, we've got a situation where it works to effectuate an acquisition and as another kind of acquisition. And therefore, we're going to say the Kohen Kan, and therefore it should also be able to be used for Kiddushin. So afani avi chuppah shekona ba'alma v'kona kan. So too chuppah has another situation where it makes an acquisition. So too it should be able to make an acquisition here. So the bottom line is, so now the bottom line is we'll learn from all three of them. So the Gemara asks, well, one second, well, all three of them do have something unique, because all three of them have the ability to do something against the will of the person involved, right? A get can be against the will of the wife. The bia can be against the will of the yivama, and the money can be against the will of the Jewish maidservant. And so as a result, in each case, there's an aspect of being against the person's will. Rav Huna, so how would Rav Huna respond to that? So kesef miya beishus lo ashkechan bal karka. When it comes to marriage, so there isn't an element of forcible marriage, and so as a result, he's not going to say that we can learn that when it comes to kesef with respect to a Jewish maidservant, that will allow that to proceed. So as a result, Rav Huna has effectively learned from kesef shtar ubia to chuppah, and so as a result, Rav Huna says, even though we don't paskin like this, Rav Huna concludes that chuppah can also effectuate the initial stage of marriage, namely nisuin, which is done through Kiddushin. Okay, so now Rava is going to challenge this, and Abaye is going to respond on behalf of Rav Huna. So Amar Rava shtei tshuvos b'davar. 1 second, we have two issues that we can raise with respect to this. First, we can raise chad d'shalosh tanan v'arba lo tanan. We didn't say 4 in our Mishnah. We said that there were 3 methods of doing Kiddushin. And so that's clearly coming to exclude chuppah. V'od klum chuppah gomeres ella al yedei Kiddushin. The only reason that chuppah works in the first place is because you already have a relationship that has been created by Kiddushin. How can you figure something out that chuppah should be able to do something that's not preceded by Kiddushin from the fact that chuppah can work when you have Kiddushin? Meaning, how do you figure out that chuppah is somehow going to be able to do something when you don't have a pre-existing relationship? So Amarle Abaye says to Rava, listen, I can respond to both of your points because Hadakamer Gimel Tanan, the Arba Lo Tanan, because when you taught the fact that their reference is 3 and not 4, I can tell you Tana Milsa de Dixiva Beheja Katani, Milsa de Lo Ksiva Beheja Lo Katani, that when we taught the things in our Mishnah, we're talking about what was explicitly taught in the Torah. And as we've seen over the last few days, we can learn Kesef Shtar Ubia directly from Sukkim in the Torah. But as we just saw with respect to Rav Huna's derivation, you don't learn chuppah from anything that's written in the Torah. You learn it from the 3 other forms of Kiddushin. And so that's why the Mishnah may not have used the term 4, even though Rav Huna believes that he's right. And moreover, and when you came to point out that chuppah only works because it was preceded by Kiddushin, Rav Huna nami hachikamar, he would say the following: Ma kesef she'eno gomer achar kesef. Look, money does not work after money, and yet it does work for Kiddushin. Chuppah shegomeres achar kesef eno din shetikna, but chuppah works after money. So it should certainly enable you to do that first acquisition. Namely, the bottom line is that the lesson that Rav Huna learns is actually can work. We can get it to work. And so as a result, that is why Abaye believes that Rav Huna would have a response to both of Rava's challenges. Okay, so now that we've talked about that, we're going to change topics slightly and now go through the Kiddushin process of talking about what is the language that causes marriage to happen. So Tana Rabbanan, Ketzav V'Kesef, how do we actually do this concept of Kiddushin? Through money. So Nazan La Kesef, Oshava Kesef. So the man gives the woman money or something worth money. V'Amar, and he says to her, Harei at Mekudeshesli, Harei at Meoresesli, Harei at Li Into. So you are Mikudesha to me, you are a Oreset to me, or you are to me a wife. All of those cases, Harezo Mikudeshes. It's not that you need to use all 3 languages. Any of the individual languages is sufficient. So Aval he shenasna, but if she does the giving, Va'amra, and she says, Va'amra he, and she says, the Hareini Mikudeshes Lecha. I am married to you. I am mikudeshes to you. I am me'oreses to you. Again, each of these aspects of erisin or kedushin. Hareini lecha into. I am, I am to you for a wife. Eina mikudeshes. All of these are not. She's not married because apparently she's doing the action. So Maskifla Rav Papa asks a very good question because Taima did nasan hu va'amar hu. In the very beginning, we say that he has to do the giving and he has to do the speaking. Ha nasan hu va'amrahi. If he were to do one and she were to do the other, Eino Mikudeshes, the implication is that it doesn't work. But Ema Seifa. But now, if you take a look at the end of the Mishnah, end of this brisa, Aval he shenasna lo va'amrahi. She's doing both the actions. Lo hava kedushin. Then it doesn't work. Taima dinasna he va'amrahi. The implication is it's because she did both actions. She did both the giving and the speaking. Hanasan hu va'amrahi hava kedushin. So we got, but which implies that if he did the giving and she did the speaking, then we would have a good, valid kedushin. So that seems to suggest that there are a contradiction, because the beginning of the brisa suggests if she does one and he does the other, it doesn't work. Whereas the end of the brisa suggests that if he does one and she does the other, it does work. So Reisha Dafka. So which one is it? How do we understand this brisa? So Reisha Dafka Seifa Kedil Naspa. The beginning of the brisa is exact, is precise, is the meaning that it is telling us the truth. Namely, if he has to do both in order for the marriage to work, and the end of the brisa is not being exact. Well, 1 second, Batani Seva Milsa Desasra Reisha. It's fine to not be exact, but you don't want the end of the brisa to contradict it. And here we effectively have something that effectively contradicts. So Ella Hakikamer. So this is how you are supposed to read the brisa. Nasa. So we're going to have two possibilities. First, nasan hu va'amar hu, we have if he gives it and he says it, so pshita dahabu Kiddushin, and it's clear that that's going to be a valid Kiddushin. Nasan hu va'amra he, but if he were to give and she were to speak, nasa kemisha nasna he va'amra he, then it's like she did both. And as a result, below have a Kiddushin, and therefore it would not be a Kiddushin. So basically, we're going to read in a few words and make it so that it's clear that all cases other than he does both is not valid. The by same, or you could say, you know what? Really, the meaning is the following: Nasan hu va'amar hu. If he does both, well then mikudeshes, she's married. Nasna hi va'amra he. If she does both, aina mikudeshes, then she's not married. Nasan hu va'amra he. If he does one and she does the other, sveika he v'chayshina midarabanan. Then it's a case of uncertainty, and we are uncertain, and therefore we need to be strict because maybe the Kiddushin was actually valid, and so you would need to have a get just in case. Now, this what happens if other language is used by a man in attempting to marry his wife? Well, for that you're going to need to stay tuned for tomorrow's daf. I wish you a Shabbat Shalom. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, and I look forward to continuing our learning next week. Please note that both, obviously, to the extent that you guys are participating by Zoom, it won't really make that much of a difference. But next week on Wednesday and Thursday, we will be Zoom only and not in person. Have a wonderful week, and I look forward to being back in person next Friday. And in the meantime, continuing our learning together. Oh, I can't hear you.
Oh, I just said Yasher Koach. Sorry, I didn't unmute.
Baruch to, yeah. Thank you so much. Have a great Shabbos, everybody. Be well. Bye-bye.
Great Shabbat. No, and great Chodesh.
Amen. Chodesh Tov.